why I'm thinking about them. This here's not gonna be too long, but long enough. Um, I got this here from Angenette Levy, talking about Corey Richards. With that being said, let's get into it.
My channel. Thanks so much for joining me. If you would do me a big favor, please hit that thumbs up button. It really helps the video in the algorithm for YouTube. And I'd love to have you as a subscriber, so please subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. I'm going to be talking about Corey Richards. She is the Utah mom and children's grief book author accused of murdering her husband, Eric Richards, back in 2022. This is a case that I have followed really, really closely. I haven't talked much about it here on this channel, but that's going to change. I got some new documents that landed in my inbox, and I've been digging through them, and they're pretty interesting. These are documents from the defense, and they're saying basically that things in this case have now changed. The prosecution is basically saying in the case against Corey Richards, and I'll put up her picture right now, that's her. She was a real estate agent, a realtor who was involved in trying to remodel houses. She was building this big monstrosity of a house out there in Utah. It was a big hot mess, and the prosecution, the Summit County prosecutors, are saying that she was way overextended. She was basically robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that she wanted her husband, Eric Richards' money because she was in it deep. She was taking out loans these are hard money loans with high interest rates that she couldn't pay back. And basically they're just saying she was in a financial mess, and that she also had a lover, that she was having an affair. So Eric Richards was pretty well off, very well to do. Eric Richards, he died back in 2022, and the prosecution in this case says he died from fentanyl poisoning. That's very important. They contend that Corey Richards bought fentanyl from a housekeeper, Carmen Lauber, who is a witness in this case, and that she used that to poison Eric with a Moscow mule. That's been the allegation that's been made in court documents many times over, and we've reported on that many times in the past. Well, Eric Richards actually suspected that Corey was trying to poison him like a month or so before he died. She had bought some sandwiches. He started feeling really sick. It was a big deal. He took some steps to protect
I'll
his
be right back.
assets. So after he died, Corey didn't get any of his money. It's pretty wild. Well, now the defense has filed some documents saying that the prosecution has exculpatory evidence, that they have become aware that this witness, Bobby Crozier, who claimed to have sold fentanyl to Carmen Lauber, so Corey Richards, I guess, could get it, that he has kind of retracted his testimony, that he has recanted what he originally said, that he sold Carmen fentanyl and not another type of opiate drug. So the allegation in this case has always been that Eric died of fentanyl poisoning. And now the defense is saying, well, the witness who allegedly said he sold fentanyl to Carmen is now saying, no, I didn't. I sold another type of drugs. So this is Eric Richards. This is him. This is the photo from his obituary. Father of three. I have talked to Greg Skordas, the attorney representing the Richards family. He told me through him, he has told me many times, that Eric did not use drugs. I think the defense in this case could be that Eric Richards was using fentanyl, was using drugs, if that is indeed what the autopsy showed in this case. Now, I think there could be a possibility here. Crozier, maybe he thinks he was selling one thing and it was really another. Maybe it was fentanyl. There are any number of drugs, and I know this because I've covered, this fentanyl issue for a really long time. There are drugs that can appear to be one thing and stamped one way, and they look like they are one drug, but they can actually contain fentanyl. Cocaine was being laced with fentanyl. Marijuana, in some instances, was being laced with fentanyl. So there are a lot of people who've overdosed on fentanyl thinking they were using another type of drug. That could be a possibility in this case. So let's dig into this document that they have filed. This is from the defense in this case. And they go through all of these headlines. This is how this document starts. The request for order, compelling disclosure of exculpatory evidence. It starts with, prosecutors say she mixed a lethal dose of fentanyl into his drink. Corey Richens' housekeeper allegedly sold her fentanyl pills prior to husband's poisoning. Corey Richens, the Utah mom, who allegedly poisoned her husband with a fentanyl-laced cocktail. All these headlines stem from allegations that Ms. Richens procured oxycodone and ultimately fentanyl from her relationships and connections with Carmen Lauber, Robert Crozier, Nick Von Savage, and Susan Kohler. Initially, Ms. Lauber informed investigators that fentanyl was never procured. See transcript of Carmen's interview that was from April of 2023 after Eric died. The investigating officers subsequently interviewed Ms. Lauber again on May 3rd, 2023. It was at that meeting when Ms. Lauber indicated she got fentanyl from Robbie, that is Robert Crozier. And it says, see transcript of this interview, May 3rd, 2023. Was she granted some kind of immunity for getting fentanyl? Maybe, who knows? During his interview, he confirmed that he had sold fentanyl to Ms. Lauber on 2 occasions. So Robert Crozier initially told the cops back in 2023, yeah, I sold Carmen Lauber fentanyl 2 times back in 2023. Remember, the allegation from the prosecution is that Corey tried to poison Eric on 2 separate occasions back in 2023, and the second time was with the Moscow Mule, and ultimately he was killed and died. That's the allegation. Sometime in April of this year, Mr. Crozier was interviewed by 2 members of the Summit County prosecution team at a Starbucks in Salt Lake City. The prosecution team asked Mr. Crozier if he had sold any fentanyl to Ms. Lauber. Mr. Crozier told them he had not sold fentanyl. He specified that he had sold OxyContin to Ms. Lauber on 2 occasions in early 2022. Mr. Crozier told the prosecution team that he met Ms. Lauber at the Maverick and Draper both times to sell her the pills. The prosecution team asked why Mr. Crozier had previously stated he had sold Ms. Lauber fentanyl. Mr. Crozier specified he did not remember saying that he had sold fentanyl and told them he had been detoxing during that interview and was out of it. Mr. Crozier told the prosecution team that he was certain he had sold Ms. Lauber OxyContin 30 milligram pills, also known as Roxy's or Roxy 30s. The prosecution team asked Mr. Crozier several times if he was sure, and Mr. Crozier told them he was sure he sold Ms. Lauber OxyContin. Now, it's important to note, OxyContin, it's still an opiate. Not fentanyl, but it's still an opiate, and I'd like to know, were these directly from a pharmacy? Is this like, how did you get these, Robbie? Did these come from a pill mill somewhere? I don't know. Could they have been laced with fentanyl? We don't know that, but this is common that this happens when you're buying drugs on the street from somebody. It has happened. The DEA even has a big campaign out there about how you could be buying a pill and thinking you're getting one thing, but guess what? It probably has something else like fentanyl in it. So is that a possibility here? Possibly. The prosecution has been aware of this exculpatory evidence since April of this year. The prosecution did not inform the defense of this information. No press release was issued. No reports, nothing. The prosecution just kept quiet in preparation for trial. Defense counsel located and interviewed Mr. Crozier within the past 30 days. It was during this interview at that meeting and the exculpatory information became known to defense counsel. So they're saying, we only found out about this because we went and tracked this guy down. The prosecution had an obligation to tell us about this, and they haven't done so yet. Now, were they holding on to this? Were they looking into it further? I don't know, but it's possible. The prosecution is required to disclose to the defendant the following material on information directly related to the case of which the prosecution team has knowledge and control. evidence that must be disclosed under the United States and Utah Constitution, including all evidence favorable to the defendant that is material to guilt or punishment. Their duty to disclose is a continuing duty as the material or information becomes known to the prosecutor. So they're saying, look, you've known about this for a while and you haven't sent it over to us. And I'm telling you, they really should have. So let's go over to Robert Crozier's affidavit, because Robert Crozier, Robbie, filled out an affidavit. He writes, I'm Robert Crozier, and I currently reside in the Davis County Jail, located in Farmington, Utah. So he's in jail. I'm over 18 and have personal knowledge of all facts stated herein. I've been identified as a witness in the above stated matter. In that capacity, I have been interviewed on 2 separate occasions by individuals associated with the prosecution of Corey Darden Richens. I have been told that the first interview was on or about May 4th, 2023. So this is a little over a year after Eric Richens died. They would have had the toxicology back, seen what killed Eric Richens, and started investigating from there, going through computer records, etc. It was conducted by 2 officers from the Summit County Police Department at the Davis County Jail. I do not know the names of the officers who interviewed me. On May 4th, 2023, I had been in jail for a short time and was detoxing from drug use. I do not have any personal recollection of the details of that interview, although I have since been told that I agreed that I had sold fentanyl to Carmen Lauber in 2022 on 2 occasions. I'm very interested to know if this interview was recorded. You would certainly hope that there wasn't just a transcript and that there was an actual recording. So there should be, if there's a transcript, a recording, and a report. Number 6, in early April of 2025, I was asked to meet with 2 people from the Summit County Attorney's Office. I believe that both individuals were prosecutors, and they told me they were prosecuting Corey Richens. I believe that one of them was Brad Bloodworth. He's come under scrutiny in the past by the defense, and, you know, he gets up in court and talks mostly every time as the lead prosecutor in this case. I cannot recall the name of the other individual who was at the meeting, but it was a man with a beard. I was sober at that meeting and had been sober for over 3 months. We met at the Starbucks in downtown Salt Lake City. I believe it was the Starbucks on 80 South Main Street, Salt Lake City, Utah. Mr. Bloodworth and the other individual asked me if I had sold fentanyl to Carmen Lauber. I told them no. I sold Oxycontin to Carmen Lauber on 2 occasions in early 2022. I told them I met her at the Maverick and Draper both times to sell her the pills. So the prosecution's theory is that Corey asked Carmen to get her the Michael Jackson stuff, which is actually propofol. That's what killed Michael Jackson. But she wanted something that was going to kill somebody. That's the allegation. They asked why I had previously told officers that I had sold her fentanyl. I told them I did not remember saying that, and that I had been detoxing during that interview and was, quote, out of it. I told them that I was certain that I had sold Carmen Lauber Oxycontin 30 milligram pills, otherwise known as Roxy or Roxy 30s. They asked me several times if I was sure, and I told them yes, I was sure that I sold her Oxycontin. I was told at that meeting that I would be called as a witness in this case, and that the Summit County Attorney's Office would be putting me up in a hotel near the courthouse. I certify that this statement is true. The defense, in response to all of this, is saying, hey, you are keeping our client in jail. She's sitting there awaiting trial, and she should get bail. So they filed a motion. I don't think it's going to work, but they want her let out on bail, given this new information, because they believe it's significant enough to show that she didn't poison Eric. I'm not so sure it is. This is what they're contending. So they're going to say, this is reasonable doubt, or it's exculpatory. It shows, in their view, that she did not kill Eric. So how did the fentanyl end up in Eric's system? The defense will say, not our job to tell you that. That's the prosecution and the police's job to answer that question. Not our job. It's not our job to solve murders. It's our job to defend our client. So they're holding the state's feet to the fire, and they're going to contend that this wasn't even a murder at all. They're going to say that he overdosed. So here's the motion for bail. And it says, she moves the court to reconsider setting bail and ordering conditions of release pursuant to section 7720207 of the Utah Code. They say there is a material change in circumstances since November of 2024 when they were last in court, and she was, not going to get bail again. The matter of bail has been brought before this court on 2 occasions. First on June 12, 2023, this court conducted a detention hearing and considered exhibits, testimony, and arguments submitted by the parties. At that time, Ms. Richens was facing a potential death penalty on the aggravated murder charge and was not entitled to bail as a matter of right pursuant to section 201, paragraph 1, subparagraph 2 of the Utah Code. The court did, however, go on to find that there was substantial evidence to support the charge and clear and convincing evidence that the defendant would pose a substantial danger to the community if released on bail. So on October 22nd of 2024, she filed a motion to reconsider bail, arguing that there had been a material change of circumstance since the prior detention hearing.
How?
The court found that a material change in circumstance did exist, and on November 12th, a hearing was held on the motion. After oral argument, the court ruled from the bench that there was still substantial evidence to support the charge and clear and convincing evidence the defendant would pose a danger. But they're saying now we've had even more of a material change in circumstances. New evidence has come to light that goes to the heart of the state's allegation that Ms. Richens poisoned her husband with fentanyl. The state's case is based on statements made by Carmen Lauber that she procured fentanyl from Mr. Robert Crozier on 2 occasions and sold it to Ms. Richens. The defense has recently learned in April of 2025, Mr. Crozier met with prosecutors for Summit County and informed them that this was not true. Mr. Crozier told members of the prosecution team that he did not sell fentanyl to Ms. Lauber, but rather sold her OxyContin. Although the state failed to disclose this exculpatory information, an exculpatory statement to the defense is required under Brady and Giglio. Those are 2 Supreme Court cases. The defense has learned of it independently when they interviewed Mr. Crozier on September 3rd, 2025. So they're saying basically 5 months passed and the prosecution did not tell them about this. Mr. Crozier has now informed both the state and the defense that he sold only OxyContin to Carmen Lauber on 2 occasions in early 2022. He further told both the state and the defense he did not recall previously telling Summit County detectives that he had sold fentanyl to Ms. Lauber. And they submit a bunch of argument about this. And they talk about how he said he was out of it. He's sober now, and he says he's now certain that he sold Carmen Lauber 30 milligram OxyContin pills, different from fentanyl. So there you go. It will be interesting to see how the state responds to this. Is there anything in the toxicology where it shows that anything included in OxyContin is in that? Was this packaged potentially, this pill or these pills, were they packaged as OxyContin and they had fentanyl in them? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the state responds to this because they have to respond to this. And as of right now, it doesn't appear they have, but they will because they are required to do so. In this matter, the state's entire theory of criminal liability is that Corey Richens procured fentanyl from her housekeeper, Carmen Lauber, which she caused to be unwillingly ingested by her husband in some unknown way, directly causing his death. There's no physical evidence of this, but only the statements of Carmen Lauber. And these statements are wholly dependent on whether or not Lauber procured fentanyl from Robert Crozier. None of these so-called fentanyl pills were found nor tested.
But did he get them from that
Lauber
person?
only believed she sold Corey fentanyl because she believed that that is what Crozier gave her. If Robert Crozier did not, in fact, sell fentanyl to Lauber, there can be no credible argument that substantial evidence of guilt exists. So there you have it. arguments from the defense saying that Corey Richins should be let out of jail. Should be let out of jail right now. Her defense says she needs to have bail. Let's go to trial.
How so?
Let's have a jury decide this. It would get very
Why should this person be let out?
With the toxicology stuff, God only knows what Carmen Lawver is going to say on the stand, what Robert Crozier will say on the stand. We don't know. But I have a feeling, and I don't know this for certain, you just don't know what you're getting when you buy drugs on the street from somebody. You
Exactly.
just don't know. And I think that could be a possibility here, or there could be other possibilities. So we will keep an eye on this. I will keep an eye on this because I've been following this case so closely from the very beginning. Everybody, I really appreciate you watching this video. I'm usually live on Saturday nights, but this is kind of not really live because I had to do something, but I really hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know where you've been watching from in the comments and any other cases you'd like me to discuss. I'm Angenette Levy. It's been great being with you. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, hit that thumbs up button and hit the...
And here's another one. Another clip I got for y'all.
Netflix just dropped Monster, the Ed Gein story. It's the latest series from Ryan Murphy about the real-life killer who inspired Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Here's the question. How much of it is true, though? How much of it is Hollywood horror? We're going to talk with an expert who has written the book on Ed Gein, literally, to separate fact from fiction. Let's talk about it right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. So Netflix has dropped another bingeable series, Monster, the Ed Gein story. It is the third chapter in Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan's true crime anthology that previously reimagined Jeffrey Dahmer and the Menendez brothers. The series was already a hit. This one is now a hit too, because this time the series turns the gaze towards one of America's most disturbing real-life figures, Ed Gein, the quiet Wisconsin farmer whose crimes in the 1950s redefined horror forever. Now here's the trailer for the series, which if you don't know, is #1 on Netflix chart right here in the United States. So who is Ed Gein? Ed Gein is the man who inspired Psycho's Norman Bates, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's Leatherface, the Silence of the Lambs' Buffalo Bill. But how much of what Netflix shows is real? How accurate is it? And how much is pure Hollywood nightmare fuel? We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that with an expert, a true crime author who has written books about this guy, okay? But first, let me back up a little bit, rewind, let's talk about it. Let's go to Plainfield, Wisconsin. Now, I want you to picture a lonely farm on the outskirts of a small, frozen Midwestern town in the late 1940s. The neighbors know Ed Gein as this quiet, polite handyman. Maybe a little odd, sometimes babysits for local families, but behind that mild-mannered exterior was a man spiraling into madness. Ed Gein was born in August of 1906 to George and Augusta Gein, a pair of deeply religious parents who raised Ed and his brother Henry under their mother's iron rule. This is according to a 1957 article in Time magazine. Augusta was a devout, fanatical woman who taught her boys that women were sinful, in particular telling them that something similar to the Bible's Noah's Ark, that story would happen again to punish them for being immoral. She isolated Gein from the outside world, punished him for trying to make friends, and filled his head with fire and brimstone ideas about sin and sex and damnation. Experts believe that Ed Gein essentially worshipped her and became obsessed with her. Now, George, Ed's father, was an alcoholic who died in 1940. And 4 years later, Ed Gein's brother, Henry, died in a fire under what was determined to be suspicious circumstances, though it was officially ruled an accident. Investigators could never prove if Ed Gein was involved, and he never confessed. By the way, you know why we're able to bring you stories like this? It's not only because of the amazing support that we get from all of you out there, but also from our incredible sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, a firm firm with over 1,000 attorneys. You know why they're so big? Because they win all the time. They have recovered over $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In the past few months, a client in Florida received $12 million after the insurance company offered just $350,000. Out in Pennsylvania, a client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's $650,000 offer. There's another client in Pennsylvania that received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan makes it so simple. You can start a claim on your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at fortylegal.com/LC sidebar by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. And so Gein was living alone with his mother until her death in 1945 after 2 strokes, leaving him devastated. Locals said he sealed off her bedroom, turned it into a shrine. And this is when things started getting really dark. According to reporting from A&E, he began reading pulp horror magazines and anatomy books, and information about Nazi medical experiments involving things as absolutely horrific as using human skin to make lampshades.
What
Then,
the hell?
early 1950s, women in this area, women around Plainfield, started disappearing. The horror unraveled on November 16, 1957, when Bernice Worden, a local hardware store owner, went missing. Police found a receipt connected to Ed Gein in her store and blood on the floor. When they arrived at his farmhouse, what they found still defies belief. Inside, the horrors were unedited. Organs in jars, human skulls used as bowls, masks made of female faces, a lampshade made from human skin, a corset fashioned from a woman's torso. In the shed, they discovered Bernice's decapitated, mutilated body hanging upside down like a deer carcass. Now, here's the thing. Ed Gein confessed not only to killing Bernice, but another woman, tavern owner Mary Hogan, who had vanished 3 years earlier. But most of the body parts in his home, they came from the graves that he apparently robbed. Women who he reportedly said reminded him of his mother. He admitted to exhuming
Weird
these 9
son of a
graves,
bitch.
cutting out useful parts to make furniture and wearable items. Investigators verified many of those details by reopening graves and finding them disturbed and things missing. According to USA Today, Ed Gein was later found mentally unfit to stand trial, spent the rest of his life in psychiatric care. He was never really prosecuted for the other crimes that he admitted to. He spent the rest of his life in psychiatric care until his death in 1984 at the age of 77. Okay, now let's go back to Netflix, right? Netflix's Monster, the Ed Gein story. It stars Charlie Hunnam as Ed Gein. It's produced by Ryan Murphy and Ian Brennan. This 8-episode series released on October 3rd. It blends biography with horror. It traces Ed Gein's childhood, isolation, descent into madness. But here's what's interesting. It weaves in pop culture threads about how his crimes later shaped Psycho, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Silence of the Lambs. It is slick, it is cinematic, it is deeply unsettling, but also in classic Ryan Murphy fashion, the argument is, it's dramatically embellished. So to help us separate fact from fiction, to really uncover the real story of Ed Gein, I want to bring on a special guest. I always say I have a special guest, but this is really, really a special guest. We're so happy to have him. Harold Schechter is joining us. Now, who is Harold? Harold is a true crime author of the book Deviant, the shocking true story of Ed Gein, the original Psycho. Harold, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
You got it. So as our resident Ed Gein expert, let's just start here. What got you involved in wanting to study his life, to write the book? Let's just start there.
Well, for 42 years, my day job was as a professor of American literature here at Queens College here in New York City. And my special area of study was 19th century Gothic literature, Edgar Allan Poe, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and so on. So I've always been very interested in why we need stories about monsters. And at some point in my researches on another book, I came across the fact, which was not widely known at the time, I mean, I was unaware of it, that both Hitchcock's Psycho and Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre had both been inspired by the same true-life criminal. So I began to investigate that, thought it might make an intriguing subject for a book, and proceeded to do a great deal of research into the story, traveling to Plainfield, speaking to Gein's neighbors and people who had grown up with him, and interviewing psychiatrists who had treated him and so on. And the result was my book, Deviant.
And let me say this, there is a tremendous interest in Ed Gein. I mean, even if you look at the Netflix series right now, I think it's #1 on the charts. You've watched a majority of it. We're going to get into specific points about whether they got it right or not. But from your opinion, two questions I have. One, do you think that they got his story right, generally speaking? We'll get into specifics. And two, there has been a backlash on these kind of shows that would arguably glamorize or dramatize a killer, you know, and we saw it in the Menendez brothers. We're seeing it here. Do you have a concern with these kinds of shows where you're blending horror with entertainment? So let's start here. How much of it do you think is actually correct? How much of it is accurate? And do you have a concern with a show like this?
I would say that 90% of it is inaccurate. I was actually quite taken aback by the kinds of liberties the writer Ian Brennan took with the Gein story. There's so much in the show that's pure fabrication and has nothing to do with the realities of the case. In its broad outline, it's accurate. I mean, Gein was this loner, overly attached to his mother, who became a grave robber and murdered 2 local women. But aside from a few bare facts like that, there was pretty much nothing in all 8 episodes that seemed to me to bear any reality to the historical facts.
And that's interesting that you say that, and I want to dive into that, but you mentioned his mother, Augusta. It's, you know, often portrayed as the key to his psyche. From your research, was that really the root of Ed Gein, his psychology? Was it just part of a larger picture? Let's start right there.
Well, it was certainly a major part of his psychology. I mean, it appears that after her death, when he was living alone in this ramshackle farmhouse with no electricity, running water, he grew so lonely for her company, he attempted to dig up her corpse and bring it back home to me, but he was unable to reach the coffin, primarily because the soil in that part of Wisconsin is very sandy, and many coffins are interred within concrete vaults. That seems to have been the case with Augusta. So then he began to dig up the bodies of middle-aged and elderly women who might have reminded him in some way of his mother, and bring those back to his farmhouse. Apparently, when he ran out of suitable corpses in the local graveyard, he decided to make a couple of them. So he murdered these 2 women, I would say executed them, and brought their bodies back home. So, yeah, I think a lot of the actions that have made him so notorious and really unique in the annals of American crime had to do with this attempt to resurrect his mother.
And before we get into the specifics of the show, you raise a larger point. There are people who say, there are accounts who say he's not the conventional serial killer, as we would know, more of a grave robber, like you said, who crossed the line. Would you agree with that? He's not a traditional serial killer as we, typically think?
Yeah, I've been saying that for a while.
Okay.
That the new edition of my book, which you can see over my shoulder, I wrote an afterword, and the first thing I talk about is the fact that Gein was not a serial killer. In fact, the phrase serial killer doesn't even appear in my book. Uh, the phrase serial killer was coined to describe specifically what used to be called lust murderers, that is to say, psychopathic sex killers like John Wayne Gacy or Ted Bundy, who derive their sick pleasure from abducting, torturing, and then murdering victims, and usually having an orgasm when they finally kill them. Gein was not a sex killer. The two women he killed, as I said, he just shot in the head. I mean, he executed them. He wasn't interested in torturing them. He was interested in bringing their corpses back home so he could mutilate them in the way he'd like to do. So yeah, Gein was one thing of the show that I had difficulty with is that, you know, it presents Gein as this sort of prototypical serial killer who inspired all these other serial killers. I'm sure all the serial killers they show at the end of the show had no idea who Ed Gein was. Again, among other things, he was a pretty obscure figure. I modestly take some credit for bringing him into the larger public awareness. But he was not a serial killer.
No, and I appreciate you emphasizing that point. Let's get into some of the storylines in this, and we'll start with what you just said. You know, how Ed Gein would sneak into these graveyards at night under moonlight, dig up the coffins, harvest the skin, the bones to make these macabre artifacts. From that depiction in the show, that aspect of it, is it all accurate or no?
Well, part of it's pretty accurate from what I saw. The most inaccurate part is the scene in which we see Gein having intercourse with one of the bodies. It's very unclear if he ever had any sexual activities with the bodies. There's some suggestion that he might have at one point tried or thought of it.
Weird son of a bitch.
But he wasn't particularly interested in. The classic, the term necrophilia was originally coined to describe a early 19th century French military man. He was known as Sergeant Bertrand, who would go into graveyards at night, dig up corpses until he found one of a recently buried attractive young woman, and have sex with the corpse. You know, I always think of Gein, I know this sounds somewhat flippant, but, you know, as a peculiarly American kind of necrophile. And have sex with corpses. He wanted to use their bodies as raw material for his home improvement projects.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to put it. All right, let's talk about this babysitter aspect. So this claim that he was a babysitter, the series shows several eerie scenes where he can be sitting on the floor, telling children stories, the camera slowly revealing the horror that is waiting back home. Do the historical accounts suggest, A, that he was a babysitter, and that he was creepy or strange around children, or is that an invention of the show?
He was a babysitter, and the fact that he was a babysitter says something about the way he was perceived in the community. You know, he was just seen as maybe slightly simple-minded, but friendly and obliging person who would run errands for neighbors and so on. So apparently he did do some babysitting, but he actually related very well to children. When I did my research, I spoke to a young man, I guess he was in his 40s maybe at the time I spoke to him, who had been Gein's nearest neighbor and had been in Gein's house, you know, who spoke warmly of Gein. Gein apparently related better to children than he did to grown-ups. So all that stuff about Gein terrorizing these kids is just one of many fabrications in the show.
Talk about grown-ups. We mentioned it earlier, Bernice Warden. So this hardware store owner who was killed by Gein, found mutilated in his shed. The Netflix series kind of portrays this romantic relationship, right, between the two of them. And in Monster, his relationship with her, and she's portrayed by Leslie Manville, it's complex, it's longing, it's elements of resentment, it's delusion. To these kind of tragic opposites. She's a widow trying to move on. He's this lonely man yearning for a maternal figure. There's a lot of emotional tension. What is accurate about the relationship? What is not? Do you think that they took creative liberties with the romantic aspect?
Nothing is accurate about it. I mean, it's complete fabrication. You know, Bernice Warden, kind of a grandmotherly kind of person, who ran the local hardware store. You know, Gein did seem to apparently have some interest in her. He sort of joked, well, it was hard to know if he was joking or not, but at some point he asked her to go, if she would go roller skating with him. Roller skating was a favorite activity of his. But apart from that, they had no relationship whatsoever. You know, somebody sent me recently a posting online that the Warden family is quite upset over how the show depicts their relationship. There's no truth to it at all.
That's common. We see that in a lot of these shows. People who are portrayed, the family members, particularly of those who are no longer here, they are quite vocal about how it's being portrayed. Because for a lot of people, this is going to be a show, their first introduction to Ed Gein. They may take everything as true, which is why, again, Harold, I'm so happy to have you here to break it down and separate fact from fiction. There are darker subplots here. And one of the things here is this tie with Gein to a real unsolved case, the 1953 disappearance of Evelyn Hartley, a 15-year-old babysitter from La Crosse, Wisconsin. She vanished on October 24th. She was babysitting a family's 20-month-old daughter. In the show, in Monster, detectives suspect that Ed Gein, and he even hallucinates about Evelyn, who's played by Addison Rae. In real life, Harold, what's the story? Were there ever any police leads linking him to Evelyn Hartley's disappearance?
Well, when the horrors in Gein's farmhouse were first uncovered, all these body parts, the immediate assumption was that they had come from murder victims, that Gein was in fact a serial killer, although that phrase didn't exist back then. They probably would have called it a mass murderer. You know, there was no suspicion at the time that he was a grave robber. So after his arrest, as often happens in such cases, all these police officials descended on Plainfield hoping they could close out these cold cases by pinning them on Gein. But there's absolutely no evidence that Gein had anything to do with Evelyn Hartley's disappearance. And I am firmly of the belief that he was not responsible for it, because, again, that wasn't Gein's MO. You know, he wasn't interested in abducting and sexually abusing and torturing young women. He was strictly interested in somehow both trying to resurrect his mother, bring his mother back to live with him, while at the same time, you know, the psychologists who examined Gein felt justifiably that he had these very ambivalent feelings towards his mother, which he never consciously admitted to.
Right.
You know, he was a woman who so dominated and obviously in many ways helped destroy his life. He both worshipped her, but on a level he was not aware of, you know, he harbored all these homicidal feelings towards her. So he was bringing back these bodies, both in an effort to, as I say, resurrect her, but also, you know, to enact these terrible mutilations on her. But in any case, yeah, the Evelyn Hartley thing, the part in the show where he kills these two hunters and dismembers them with a chainsaw. There's so much in the show, that is absolute make-believe.
Right.
When he helped solve the Ted Bundy case and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I wanted to get to that one, but since we're talking family, there's another big part of this lingering mystery about what happened to Ed Gein's brother Henry, is the idea that he killed him, right? So remember we told you earlier that Henry died in a fire under what was deemed suspicious circumstances, but Monster portrays his death in an interesting way. In the show, Ed Gein is seen killing his brother during an argument about their mother, striking him in a rage, staging the death as a brush fire accident. That is one of the series' most striking scenes. Any aspect of that seems to match up?
Well, there is a scene in my book that is based on something Gein must have said, in which he and Henry, Henry is sort of warning Ed about the mother, but there's no evidence that Ed killed Henry. My own feeling is, again, that he did not kill Henry, that they were both fighting this brush fire, and that Henry, which was, not a necessarily uncommon thing, died from asphyxiation or had a heart attack, and he apparently, when he collapsed, he apparently hit his head on a rock. Again, after Gein's atrocities were uncovered, there was all this talk about his having murdered Henry, that it was a Cain and Abel situation. But as far as my own opinion goes, based on my research, he did not kill Henry.
Okay. All right. Look, you mentioned Ted Bundy. I was going to mention it later. Let's talk about it actually right now. We'll get into some more of the killings that were portrayed in the show. There is a connection in the show, right? So the series ends with this kind of surreal twist that Ed Gein, institutionalized but lucid, is consulting with a young FBI agent about a new killer at the time named Ted Bundy. That is a big development in the show. My understanding is the timelines don't even match up, even if this were true, right? I mean,
No.
Did he help with the investigation to Ted Bundy at all? No, right?
No. And all those scenes at the end where you have, as I think I might have said before, these serial killers, Richard Speck, Bruno, so I forget his first name, citing Ed as his inspiration. It's ridiculous. First of all, Ed was not a serial killer. And second of all, it's very doubtful that any of those figures had any idea who Gein was at that time. So the notion of the FBI consulting him in their hunt for Ted Bundy, I kind of admire that level of imaginative fantasy, but has no basis in reality.
And going back to the idea of what killings were actually tied to and not, what's complete fiction, there is a part where we see Ed Gein, years after being locked away, kills a nurse inside the psychiatric ward. Like, the monster never really stopped, right? It's brutal, it is shocking, it leaves you thinking that he was still as dangerous, even under supervision. Did that actually happen?
No. Apparently Gein, who was living much better in the institution than he had ever lived before, with other people, and actually being served, fairly decent meals, as opposed to eating reheated baked beans out of the top of a human skull, and had, nice surroundings, well, relative to where he had lived before. Was just an easygoing model prisoner, very cheerful, very friendly, conducting these pen pal correspondence that he developed warm relationships with. So again, made up.
Made up, okay. And you put the murders to the side. Going back to romance, there's another part that we got to talk about where we meet Adeline Watkins. I believe she's played by Susanna Son. She's this waitress, this aspiring singer who supposedly falls for him, and she visits him in secret after his mother dies. And for a few episodes, it's almost like this tragic love story. Her trying to save him wanting connection, being too far gone. You know, you can say it's tender, it's unsettling. It gives the show this weird emotional break in the middle of all of the horror, in the middle of everything we're seeing. Any aspect of that's real? I mean, what do we know about her?
Well, there was an Adeline Watkins. First of all, short answer, no, none of that is real.
Okay.
So Adeline Watkins did live in Plainfield. If you see photographs of her, and I don't mean to be cruel, but you know, she bears a striking resemblance to Margaret Hamilton in The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West. She apparently, I mean, she might have gone roller skating once with Gein. It's a little unclear, but evidently she was something of a publicity hound. And when the media descended on Plainfield after the discovery of Gein's crimes, she put herself forward as Gein's girlfriend. She actually later retracted all that, but they barely had any kind of relationship. And as I say, she was by no means, resembled the actress who plays her in the show.
I want to circle back to something that you mentioned before, the legacy of Ed Gein. You talked about whether or not anyone was inspired by what he did, and you're seeing Hollywood, whether it was Psycho or whether it was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the show kind of makes, or Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill, the woman suit. It seems there was an inspiration from this, or maybe not. I mean, I think Netflix series plays with that idea in the series. They weave in little nods to these directors. How much of that connection is real? And I guess, how much has Ed Gein shaped Hollywood horror the way that Netflix suggests? It goes back to a larger theme, right? If people are watching this and people are trying to understand what they should take away from this story, what should they? I mean, what is his inspiration? What is his connection? What should people look for in this series, and what should they not look for?
Well, where the series goes wrong, again, is suggesting that Ed's main legacy was, as this pioneering serial killer. Ed does have an important legacy. He actually is an important cultural figure. And the reason for that is, I always tell people I'm a baby boomer, and I grew up in the 1950s, and I spent or misspent childhood, watching all these horror movies and stuff. And before Psycho, all the monsters in popular culture came from other places.
Mm-hmm.
Dracula comes from
Transylvania.
The Wolfman of London, and the Mummy from Egypt, or Martian invaders. What Psycho did in the character of Norman Bates was create the first really all-American monster.
Yep.
And also it was really the precursor of the later slasher movie genre. And insofar as Ed stands behind Norman Bates, which he does, most people know Psycho justifiably through Hitchcock's masterpiece, but Psycho is based on a book by the horror writer Robert Bloch. And in the book, when Norman is arrested, he compares himself to Ed Gein. So Gein is the direct inspiration for Psycho, and insofar as Psycho Americanized the genre of horror, you could say that Ed did have this major cultural impact.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go back to this Netflix show, I'm assuming you would say, take everything with a grain of salt, listen to this episode of Sidebar where we correct fact from fiction, but I think you would agree the title, Monster, that would be accurate to describe Ed Gein.
I would say you should take it with a whole salt shaker full of salt.
Fair enough.
And, but yes, but there's no question that Gein was a monster, although many people who have read my book, and I also did a graphic novel with the...
Got something else for you
Sometimes
guys.
love for your cat can get lost in translation.
It's actually from the both of us.
Wellness Pet.
It's 9 a.m. at a school in Charlotte.
This is entitled Florida Dad Morning Drunk Drop Off Goes Off the Rails. I'm gonna let this play. Give me some water and I'll be right back.
County, Florida, where parent drop-off is about to land one man in detention.
I'll be right back.
The driver, who a caller reported appeared drunk and driving dangerously, takes off seconds after one officer approaches the vehicle, failing to complete the drop-off. And seconds later, the chase is on when the driver is spotted by another officer. The slow-moving chase comes to an end when a traffic jam stops the driver in his tracks. That's when we see one juvenile exit the vehicle, who police later determined was uninjured in the incident.
Take a seatbelt. Get out of the car. Out now. Get out over there. Yeah. What's up, buddy? Hey. What's up, dude?
Police identify the suspect, seen here, as 36-year-old Jorge Gutierrez Gonzalez, who the caller told police was swerving, nodding off, and stopping at green lights before nearly hitting a car in a pole, all allegedly with that juvenile in tow, who was found shaken up on the side of the road.
Come on. What's going on with you? Nothing. What's up? You want to sit up? I'm trying to. Hey, what's going on, dude? Nothing, man. You got any health issues, or are you just drinking, or what? Yeah, what? You want to stand up, dude? Yes, sir. All right, let's stand up. One foot in front of the other one. Just come on. On your legs.
Are you gonna be willing to do field sobriety?
Don't worry, y'all. I'm here. I'm eating off camera.
Say what? No? Okay.
A brother or something? No, that's just the guy that pulled over and saw the kid upset. That's his kid. Hey, where'd the kid go? He's right there. He's fine. He's super upset, but...
I'll go this way, buddy. This way. This way. Okay. Are you gonna be willing to do standard field sobriety? I was told not to, sir. No? I was told not to. Okay. Say what? Yeah, you're going to jail, buddy. So yeah. If you don't want to do field sobriety, that's on you.
Jorge refuses field sobriety tests and requests a lawyer, but he's not exactly done talking yet.
Take a seat. You can lean in. Just lean in. Watch your head. You just hang out here for a minute, buddy. Hey, did we already get EMS? You can keep your feet. Hey. They slip. What? They slip. Slip?
¿Habla español? ¿Bueno? ¿Cómo se deslizó?
No. The slip.
Oh, okay. Slide slipped.
What?
Slide slipped. Alright, no.
About it? I'm wearing shorts. Not that I can see. Yeah, I got some on the house. Say what? He was asking if he had volume on it. Do we not have enough blood consent for our agency? You have to do slipping? Well, you're hanging out here for a second, buddy. Yeah. Did we call for EMS yet?
I didn't hear anything.
Just hang out with them for a second.
What do you mean? You can put it inside if you want. Are you gonna? Are you gonna block it? Okay.
I can put my legs in my leg.
Here, give me a second. Give me a second. Yeah, I'm gonna help you. Give me a second. It's inside?
No, what it is I have sweaty feet. So every time I try to put them in, my feet go in first.
It's fine. It's fine. Do whatever you can.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sure.
You're fine.
Alright. Or just maybe put your legs out, but let them breathe, since you have sweaty feet, you said, right? Yeah, you're fine. Just stay there. Stay in there.
Yes, sir.
Stay in there. Stay sitting. Sit now. Do you want them inside or still like that?
I figured you were constantly a mess. I don't like the way what he said.
He didn't say anything.
Alright.
He didn't say anything offensive, like to you, towards you, or anybody.
Yes, ma'am.
Alright?
Yes, ma'am. I just...
Because you know what,
if you want me in the car,
when you're driving, right, and if the police puts the lights on, you have to stop, right? It's normal procedure. So if you didn't stop, maybe that's why, because we have to make sure, you know, right? So,
yes, ma'am.
okay?
Yes, ma'am. I am a very responsible person.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
No problem.
me and my family. The order was for them to kill me.
Oh, okay.
And my mom and my dad got to life. And that's the only way we can live.
Okay. Alright. Let's hear your story.
There's nothing else.
What do you mean nothing else?
What he just said.
Alright. Do you need an ambulance? Somebody to check you over.
Were you hurt? Can I talk to you?
Hey, we just want, it's fine. Do you need somebody to come and check you?
I would say that I'm currently needing to be taken care of.
You currently need to be taken care of.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Why is it like I already asked you about?
Okay, so I'm asking you if you need an ambulance to come and check you out, right?
I am currently having a panic attack, ma'am.
Okay, alright. Okay, hey, okay. So with that being said, so do you have thoughts of something? Like, okay. Alright,
Oh Lord, now he's crying.
okay.
Okay, I'm back, y'all. I'm back.
I feel like it's not okay.
You should cry before you start drinking.
Okay. Alright,
Don't cry now.
do you feel like you're gonna do something to yourself, hurt yourself, or hurt somebody else?
Look at me, man. I'm making my school. So,
Okay. Alright, so you don't need EMS to come, right? That's we confirmed that, right?
I feel like I have a panic attack.
Okay. He said he's having an anxiety attack. But he can't deny that he's...
I just told you.
Okay, so do you need an ambulance to come and check you out? Last time.
Yes.
Okay, yes, he does need an ambulance.
Because yes, ma'am.
Okay, no comment, alright? Okay, so let's get in here. Put your feet. I'll help you out, okay? Wait. Alright, now you got it? Okay, alright. Yeah, go ahead and ask him a question. What's up? No, I can't hear you. What did you say? Did you sound good? I don't know. I'll ask, okay? Yeah, I'll ask. He was asking about his son if he's okay.
Yeah, he's just shook up. He's upset.
Okay. He's okay. He's being taken to school now, okay? He's just shook up a little bit, but he's going to school, okay? He's good. Yeah, grandma or somebody's picking him up to take him to school, okay? Alright.
With Jorge secured in a patrol car, another officer catches up with the juvenile passenger before sharing the other side of this story.
I think he just said that they lived like 10 minutes away from here, and he was driving, and he said he kept kind of dozing off, so he called the ambulance like 5 times, she wouldn't answer. Yeah. So that he was like stopping at green lights and kind of swerving. Okay. So he said he tried to call with the answer phone, so he called his so they called the police. So he called the police, and then I asked him what was said while we were following him, and he said that he kept just saying he wanted to talk to the lady on the phone, he wanted to talk to the lady on the phone. And I said, did you know we were back there? And he was like, yeah, we knew you guys were back there. So when he decided to get out of the car, as soon as I could get out, I was getting out of the car. So as soon as we stopped, he pulled out, he jumped out of the vehicle. but there's no other kids
I
in
had
the
a
house.
good exciting couple of 30 seconds, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Shit, keep getting out in the middle of the traffic, then.
Well, as soon
Moments later, Jorge's mom arrives on scene.
Grandma.
Okay, so that's your son, the driver who drives that car is your
Yeah,
son?
this is the first time. I don't know how working on that is done.
Okay, well, he was drinking this morning, drinking alcohol, okay?
Okay.
So this is your son, right? And that's
Yes.
your grandson?
Yes.
Okay, so your son, who was drinking alcohol, took him to school. He is driving so erratically, he calls us up. Like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. I'm really scared of what's going on here. I mean, I don't know exactly the words, but that's what we all got over the radio. He pulls into the school. Now, the call came out right before he got to the school, so our deputy, the school resource officer, goes to make contact with him. He knocks on the door and says, hey, he drives off. With him not even leaving him at the school. So now he's in the car, he drives off. We find him at a racetrack. That deputy turns on the lights to do a traffic stop. Okay, like everyday traffic stop. He drives off from the traffic stop. We got another deputy, now we have two cops following him. He drives over here. The only reason he stopped because he got stuck in traffic. And that's when he darted out of the car to separate himself from his dad, and that's when we were able to get him out of the car.
Okay, I don't care because he is the one that he's drunk. He's drunk.
He's a drunk?
I don't know.
Does he drink a lot?
No.
He is today.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is my
Okay.
point. That is my
No, I know. I mean,
okay,
so
that's my point. I am so
yeah,
mad.
you should be mad, and that's okay. Okay.
Because
Well, right now,
Hey,
right.
put your grand at a lot of things.
So be mad with your son, but make sure you love your grand. Okay.
No, I'm going to take care of him from now. I'm going to take care of him. I'm going to make one statement. He's going to live with me, and he's going to stay with me all the time. The DCA,
Sunday, mom. Where's mom at?
the DCA, they on full custody to him.
Okay.
Because
All right. So she's obviously that's a problem.
That's gonna change today.
She went to meet with one guy, the guy who one pistol to my grandson and pulled the pistol to him. And then was a lot of police over there too, and she was in the jail, the guy was on the jail, and this one is mess.
Yeah, it sounds like a mess.
Yes.
What?
Yeah, you know. Wait till midnight.
Now, medics arrive to check out the suspect.
Was he not stopped?
So the prison pastor CUD called in that, the driver was drinking when he was trying to get dropped off to school. We got behind the car, he refused to stop, and then he resisted when we got out.
Gotcha. So he was trying to get his son to school.
And then dropped him off as soon as he saw a cop, so.
Gotcha. And then we're gonna walk over here to the station.
That was it.
Just this once. So are you guys able to have a little blood go over there for?
Unless he refuses, are we gonna get a search warrant? So hospital, automatically do a blood draw, and then I send him to the hospital. I know that's what they did that before, but I've never been to
Jorge was booked for DUI, fleeing neglect and resisting arrest without violence. Court records show
Dumbass.
Jorge later pleaded no contest to the DUI and child neglect charge, while other charges were dismissed. He was sentenced to probation, 6 months with an interlock device, community service, and more.
And we have another one.
Houston is on edge again. Another body has been pulled from
Houston,
Tennessee Bayou,
y'all,
sparking new fears online.
y'all got problems.
Police say there is no serial offender at large, but with social media buzzing and multiple deaths this
Y'all
year,
got too many people dying in your city.
happening in Houston's waterways with a former
Yeah, what's going on in
and
Houston?
CIA agent. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. And this is another law and crime legal alert. There are allegations claiming that online apps like DraftKings, ESPN Bet, BetMGM, Bet365, Fanatics Sportsbook, Caesars Sportsbook, that they are engineered for addiction. These multi-billion-dollar companies allegedly continue to put profit over safety. Every small payout, free bet, boosted parlay can trigger a dopamine rush that creates dependency and a destructive habit. They can keep users hooked and trap people in a cycle that can lead to serious financial loss. While our legal sponsors are taking on the online gambling industry to seek justice and potential compensation. So if you or a loved one has struggled with addiction or financial hardship or mental health issues due to sports betting apps, then visit gamblinglawsuits.com/sidebar to take a short quiz and check your eligibility to file a claim. We're back on Sidebar asking the same chilling question that we faced the last time this story made headlines. Is there a serial killer in Houston? Social media is buzzing again.
I think there is one,
Body was
and they're
discovered in
too
the local
stupid to
waterway.
see it.
Police maintain there is no evidence of a serial killer on the loose, but
I don't
speculation
believe that.
online, it shows no sign of
I don't
slowing.
believe that for a
And can you blame them?
second.
Some have already dubbed the mysterious figure the Bayou Killer. Honestly, it reads like the opening scene of a true crime documentary, but I will tell you, for Houston residents, it's a frightening reality. Maybe not of a serial killer per se, but it's a scary thought about what may be happening here. Just when the rumors seem to be quieting down a little bit, what happens? Another body turns up. This is reignited fear and speculation across this city. That's right, this week, for at least the 16th time this year, and just weeks after a cluster of discoveries sparked a citywide panic, Houston police pulled another body from the waters of White Oak Bayou. This is a chilling development that has everyone asking the same question all over again. What is happening? What is really happening in Houston? What is happening in these bayous? Now here's a situation that set the internet on fire, okay? In less than 2 weeks last month, 6 bodies were pulled from different bayous around Houston.
Yep.
The timeline was very tight. The numbers really alarming, that it was almost impossible not to try to connect the dots here. Social media did just that. There were viral TikToks and Instagram posts speculating about a serial killer on the loose.
Yep.
From day one, city leaders and police, they've been adamant that there is no evidence of a serial killer. But I want to rewind. I want to break down exactly how we got here and try to make sense. It all started in mid-September when the first body was found on the morning of September 15th in Brays Bayou. She was identified as 21-year-old Jade McKissick, a University of Houston student who had gone missing after leaving a Midtown bar. Now, investigators said, preliminarily, there were no signs of foul play, but then, just hours later that same day, another body was recovered.
Wait, same day?
He was identified as 43-year-old Rodney Ricardo Chapman. The
Mm.
very next day, September 16th, a third person, 24-year-old Seth Joseph Hansen,
Houston,
was found
y'all
in
got
White Oak
problems.
Bayou. 2 days after that, on September 18th, a fourth body was discovered in Buffalo Bayou. He was 63-year-old Arnulfo Alvarado. And then on September 20th, a fifth body was pulled from Buffalo Bayou. That victim was 66-year-old Michael Andrea Rice. The sixth body found on September 26th in Buffalo Bayou downtown, initially unidentified, and at the time the medical examiner asked for the public's help in identifying her, describing her as a black woman under 30 years old, about 5'3", 120 pounds, short black hair, widow's peak. She was found wearing a black and beautiful t-shirt and jeans, had a distinctive 888 tattoo on her wrist. According to the Houston Chronicle, this body has now been identified as Michaela Miller, though her age remains unknown at this point. So 5 a sixth just days later. So obviously, it was reported that the city was buzzing with both fear and speculation. And what happened in response? Mayor John Whitmire and Police Chief No Diaz held a press conference to address the rumors head on. That was back on September 23rd.
We do not have any evidence that there is a serial killer loose in Houston, Texas. Let me say that again. There is no evidence that there is a serial killer loose on the streets of Houston. If there was, you would hear it from me first.
He called the social media speculation false and frustrating. Chief Diaz and Homicide Captain Salam Zia then walked through the facts. Their dive team had recovered the bodies, but they doubled down on the mayor's claims that these cases are not connected.
There's no evidence, and I repeat, no evidence to suggest that any of these incidents are connected. In all of the 5 incidents, the medical examiner's office will determine the cause of death. The investigation into these incidents is pending the determination of the ME's office. For us as an agency, rumors stir fear and anxiety in our communities. It's important to rely on verified information and investigations.
And Captain Zia emphasized that their job was to follow the science and the evidence and not social media theories. So to help us understand the psychology behind this panic, we actually spoke with criminologist Dr. Debbie Goodman on a previous episode of Sidebar, and she explained why these theories spread so quickly.
First and foremost, the topic in and of itself of murder is so mysterious to people, right? As we know, it becomes very intriguing, very fascinating. So as soon as somebody thinks that there's any category of murder, whether a double homicide, quadruple, serial murder, mass murder, family-based, school-based, workplace-based, it really captures the attention. Now, in terms of the investigators themselves, they're really looking for fact patterns. First, they need to identify who are these victims. Is there any commonality? Are they of a similar demographic, right? So we would start there. And then the victimology is so important because we also want to look at the fact patterns. When we say fact patterns, when it comes to investigations, we're really just talking about the 5 W's and the H, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So we always start there with any type of murder case, but this whole idea of fascination and people really gravitating toward this type of case where we have bodies in a river and immediately people think, well, clearly it's got to be serial murder. But Jesse, part of what I do is I look at data analytics as a criminologist, and serial murders in our modern day society is really not as common as, let's say, decades ago. So the real concern today is actually mass murders. Social media really drives people's perspective. Now, is it fact or is it fiction? That's really up to the individual to determine. But again, because we know that any category of murder is so fascinating that people in 60 seconds or less will read the post, see the headline, listen to, a blog, a podcast, and make a determination. Now they're looking for how many likes, how many reposts, and all of a sudden, in a 60-second window, a decision has been made.
Now, she urged caution, trusting the investigators to do their work, noted that in the modern age with surveillance and technology, it is incredibly difficult for a serial offender to operate without leaving a digital trail. So with the official word from the city essentially being this is tragic but unconnected, this is when the story began to kind of fade from the headlines. But the Bayous have spoken again. This past Wednesday, on October 8th, the pattern repeated. Just after 8 a.m., callers reported a body in White Oak Bayou. Houston police, their dive team, they responded, recovering the body of a male, and police reported there were no obvious signs of foul play, and as with all the others, the final word on how this person died rests with the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences. Mayor Whitmire was again quick to comment, stating we have 2,500 miles of bayous. Like I said, they're not related. It's been politicized by candidates and others, which is unfortunate, probably not paying proper respect to the families. Now, that could be a fair point. He went on to attribute many of these tragedies to personal decisions, the harsh realities faced by the city's homeless population, and said when it comes to these serial killer theories, enough is enough. Quote, I do say enough is enough on speculation out of respect for the families and also the 2.3 million Houstonians in our region. We have challenges, we're meeting those challenges, but a serial killer loose in Houston is not one of our challenges. So to break all this down, I want to bring on former FBI and CIA agent and adjunct professor of criminal justice, Tracy Walder, also a News Nation contributor. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on. It's great to see you. From your perspective, how would law enforcement initially determine whether you have a series of deaths, whether they are connected, or whether they are completely random?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think obviously the first thing they're going to utilize is autopsies, right? What were the cause of death? Was it deemed to be a homicide, an accidental drowning, all of those things? And then if they are deemed to be homicides, are they similar in terms of how they were killed? I think the other thing they're probably going to do
you got too many bodies.
Any digital devices that are salvageable. Obviously, these bodies have been in water for some period of time, as well as any social media that they can get on. They might be looking in terms of whether or not any of these individuals, retraced similar steps, came from similar locations just prior to their deaths.
If you're talking about multiple bodies discovered in these different bayous over a short period of time, what would be the patterns you would be looking for? I mean, your perspective of this kind of case, are there any red flags that would suggest to you there might be a connection? Is there any red flags that would suggest to you there could be a serial killer? And I had talked earlier about, when we previously covered this, how serial killers there's a rarity about them right now. It's not so easy, particularly in today's day and age, given technology, for there to be a serial killer. But are there things that stand out to you about this that give you pause?
Listen, I think it's a lot of bodies. I hate to be so blunt. Jesse, I understand, Houston, there are bayous, right? This is very common. There are waterways in these areas. That part's not unusual. But in my opinion, the volume, right? The volume over, a 7-month period, or to me, piques my curiosity, I guess. That is what would start to get, I don't mean to sound flippant or minimize a death, but one body or a few bodies, I understand these things happen, unfortunately. But when you have, in my opinion, 25 at one point, 20 at some point, I think that's when we get into issues here in terms of really needing to investigate these further and ensure that this isn't some kind of a targeted situation.
If you're dealing with one person or two people or a group that are committing multiple killings, would it be strange to you to leave digital evidence or footprints or any kind of, again, I go back to the idea of this is a day and age where almost everybody has a social media footprint, a digital footprint, there's surveillance all over the place. Would it be strange to you to see some sort of, if someone were committing this, evidence behind?
So, interestingly, by putting the bodies in water, you are really destroying a lot of the evidence. And so part of me wonders if that is very convenient for them to be able to do, right? You don't have to necessarily clean, a crime scene or clean a body and make sure that you haven't left any kinds of forensic evidence behind. Also, throwing a phone in water is really going to make a phone very difficult. I don't know if phones were on their bodies when they were found. That I wouldn't know. But let's just say they were. Everyone's attached to their phone in this day and age. It will make it very difficult and time-consuming to try to obtain any kind of data from that. So, in all honesty, putting a body in water is actually a great way to hide evidence.
Now, police, the city officials, they insist adamantly there's no evidence of a serial killer. When you hear that, in your experience, how often does social media, the speculation that you see on social media, and what the commentary online, does that conflict with the investigation, or does it help it? Because sometimes the public may know certain details that law enforcement doesn't, or they may be able to provide more information or clues or look into things. But how much does it conflict with an investigation?
sometimes it can conflict in terms of just if it isn't true, right? Just the sheer volume, right, of calls and leads that they would have to investigate. And then what that can do is actually stifle legitimate investigations that these departments are conducting, right? Because they have this sheer volume of accusations that if it's an open crime, they have to investigate. That's something they have to do. So that can hurt, obviously, investigators. But it sounds to me that if they are very quickly saying none of this is nefarious, they're not necessarily, in my opinion, then open to taking leads in investigations, which is also problematic on the flip side, right? To quickly call something not a homicide and then not be open to other investigations around it, that's problematic too.
Now, there have been some key updates that we want to talk about, particularly from the Harris County Medical Examiner's Office, and this adds new layers to this story because 3 new identities from that September cluster that we mentioned earlier, we want to identify them specifically here about what we're talking about. So the victim found in the White Oak Bayou on September 16th has now officially been identified as 24-year-old Joseph Hansen.
Y'all got too many people dying, man.
On September 18th,
I swear to God, y'all got too many people dying.
Alvarado. And the final Bayou death from September, the one from the 26th, has been identified as Michaela Miller. Now, here's a crucial piece of new evidence. While the causes for Hansen, Alvarado, and Miller are still pending, the medical examiner has confirmed one cause of death, 33-year-old Anthony Azua, whose body was recovered back in March, died from drowning. Now, this is significant because it is one of the very few cases this year to get an official cause of death. For context, the medical examiner has now confirmed at least 22 bodies found in the bayous through September, and with this week's discovery, that number is now 23. So for the vast majority, we still don't know how they died. Tracy, how does this change the context? How does this change the analysis?
To me, it changes the analysis in that I don't think police should be so quick as to say that there's not a potential spree killer on the loose. I understand why police want to be careful, right? We don't want to create public panic. That's not our job, and that's very irresponsible to do. But it's also irresponsible to say, there are no links between any of these and not investigate all of that thoroughly. Now, clearly, it's going to take time. I don't know how long these bodies had been submerged in.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now, and the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products, and we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an
It's going to take time. I don't know how long these bodies had been submerged in water to determine whether or not they died by drowning, other purposes, those kinds of things. But also they have to wait for toxicology reports to come back as well, and that takes a long time too. And so I'd be interested to know, potentially in the one that's been determined as drowning, if there were drugs in their system, what got them into the water in the first place. All of that is going to help in this investigation.
How common is it for a cluster of bodies to remain undetermined for months? What are the challenges when they're trying to determine if there is foul play here?
Again, length of body in water, right? Especially, and I don't mean to get into too many specifics, but it is Texas. It's very hot. It's very humid here, and that is going to decompose the body pretty quickly,
temperature,
especially in water. And so it's
the weather
going to be
and the temperature.
Very, very difficult. That just sheer passage of time and where they were found.
If the FBI joins an investigation like this, when you're dealing with multiple bodies, what resources, what tools can they bring to an investigation?
So my guess is, because obviously it's Houston, Harris County, I don't feel confident that they will be called in because it is a large county with lots of resources. But typically in an investigation, if they are called in, they have to be asked. It's not a federal investigation. Particularly there for investigative purposes, they are there for manpower purposes. So they are helping because they have that ability to go through evidence a lot more quickly than a local police department can, particularly digital evidence. Also forensic evidence, they can expedite that a bit more quickly, but they're not handling things that a medical examiner would be handling.
Now, going back to something we mentioned before, while city officials insist there's no serial killer, there are residents who have taken to social media to their own investigations and post warnings online. For example, you have TikTok user Darius Sticker said this.
So as you know, we have a serial killer on the loose. But, you know, that could possibly be my baby girl or my Kayla out there one day and get snatched up and get found in a bayou. That just really, like, bothers me, you know? And the police is clearly having a problem doing their job, right? Because I'm not understanding after the first bayou, why aren't there people staking out and watching? And then there were 5 bodies.
Another user,
Yeah.
identified as Dre,
He got
promised
a point.
payback on the supposed mass murderer.
To the Buffalo Bayou Killer. I'm gonna be in your hood. Feel me? I'm gonna take a small little slow walk through the nighttime. If you real, you won't bring a gun. If you real, you just pull it with your hands.
Well, Tracy, back to you. We talked about before about the role that the community can have, those on law enforcement. Public fear, public statements like this, how does it complicate the case?
We have to be really careful about especially statements when we're saying, retaliation against the person responsible for this. Because, even when we saw in the Idaho case, which I know you and I have talked about before, people are singled out who have nothing to do with any of this. And if you are talking about retaliation, which I'm assuming is violent, innocent people really could be heard. And that is where social media could be a great tool in terms of solving some of these investigations. But I do think it can be a pretty horrific tool as well. And I think that's exactly where we need to be careful.
Before we wrap things up, let me just ask you. I asked this about, I think, to my last guest as well. I'm going to ask you. Serial killers today, how common is it?
I think it's more common than we would think, simply because there are so many places that people can go on the internet, and places like Discord, those kinds of things, to talk about these fantasies that they have, and it empowers them to act out those fantasies. These ideas are not occurring in a vacuum like they were maybe in the 80s and the 70s.
They're not.
Occurring with people essentially egging them on in these digital spaces.
Here's the bottom line. Official investigation has not found a link between any of these deaths this year, at least hasn't been publicly made. But for public watching, body after body after body being pulled from these areas, pulled from the water, the facts from the medical examiner, they can't come soon enough.
And here's the last one.
Chevy makes America's most dependable trucks.
Has Priscilla Presley just been accused of tax fraud in connection with a brand new filing from the people suing her in this already bombshell legal battle? That's what we want to talk about. It's time to break down all of these details and allegations with the lawyer representing the 2 former business associates suing Elvis's ex-wife. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, we have another development in the Priscilla Presley legal saga that we need to talk about. And in a little bit, I'm going to be bringing back on the lawyer who's representing the people suing her to get a better sense of what exactly is going on. Because there is this brand new filing with new details, new allegations that may change what this whole case is about. First, I got to give you the backstory. A little complicated. Stay with me. I'll try to break it down. You have Brigitte Cruz and Kevin Fialco. They are self-described entrepreneurs who are really big in the world of Elvis Presley memorabilia. They apparently started working with Priscilla Presley, this is Elvis's ex-wife, years ago, helping her manage her brand and use her name, her image, her likeness to make money. That's what the lawyer said. But they also allege that Priscilla was making moves behind their backs to get more money for herself and basically cut the 2 of them out of future deals. So they have sued her for fraud, breach of contract, intentional interference with a contract, misappropriation of name and likeness. By the way, this is in response to Priscilla's own claims against them, including elder abuse. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But this was their response. Now, in these filings, they make a lot of allegations, including regarding Elvis and Priscilla's daughter, Lisa Marie. So Elvis died in 1977. And as Lisa Marie grew up, she and her mother, according to these filings, had a reportedly tumultuous relationship. Now, Elvis had apparently left his entire estate in a trust to Lisa Marie, which she inherited when she turned 25. The original filing says that Lisa Marie ended up listing Priscilla and Barry Siegel, this is Priscilla's financial manager, as co-trustees. But when Lisa Marie found out that they were allegedly mismanaging her money, she changed the trust to make herself trustee and listed her son Ben and her daughter Riley Keough as the ones who would inherit. Now, Riley being a famous actress. Again, these are the allegations from the filing. By January of 2023, this is when things, according to the filing, became really bad between Priscilla and Lisa Marie. Quote, Priscilla was aware that Lisa was getting ready to remove her as the sole trustee of Lisa's irrevocable life insurance trust and was otherwise threatening to sue her. Cruz and Fialco nevertheless worked to keep the family together. Goes on to say, Lisa suffered cardiac arrest on Thursday, January 12th, and she was rushed to West Hills Hospital. Priscilla, who knew that Lisa was in the process of taking steps to remove her as the sole trustee of Lisa's irrevocable life insurance trust, saw an opportunity to regain control. Priscilla rushed to West Hills Hospital, and despite Lisa's clear directive to prolong her life, Priscilla pulled the plug within hours of Lisa being admitted and before her granddaughter Riley was able to get to the hospital, demanding that Cruz issue a statement to the media so she could control the narrative. Priscilla demanded that a statement be released immediately, stating, "It is with a heavy heart that Emma shared the devastating news that my beautiful daughter Lisa Marie has left us." And then they claimed that the following week, Priscilla said, "I'm the queen, I'm in charge of Graceland." Quote, Cruz and Fialco were heartbroken by the unsettling behavior. Now, Cruz and Fialco also say that Priscilla not only defrauded Elvis during their divorce, but maybe contributed or drove him to his death. Yeah, so in this amended filing, it says, Priscilla's first victim was Elvis, 1968. After just over 5 years of marriage, Elvis and Priscilla divorced, entering into a property settlement agreement and marital termination agreement. Under the marital dissolution agreements, Priscilla unequivocally waived the right to inherit anything from Elvis's estate. Then in bold, Priscilla knew she was entitled to inherit nothing from Elvis. By the way, you know why we're able to bring you stories like this? It's not only because of the amazing support that we get from all of you out there, but also from our incredible sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. You know why they're so big? Because they win a lot. They have recovered over $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. In fact, in the past few months, a client in Florida received $12 million after the insurance company offered just $350,000. Out in Pennsylvania, a client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's $650,000 offer. You have another client in Pennsylvania who received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. And even if you think that your case...
Wherever life leads you, should the day come when a medical breakthrough...
Pennsylvania, who received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. And even if you think that your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not start a claim and fight for it? You deserve. Morgan & Morgan makes it so simple. You can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC sidebar by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. According to the filing, it was agreed that Priscilla would be paid $100,000, that she would receive cars, child support, spousal support, medical insurance, education. But the allegation was that Priscilla wasn't happy, that she wanted more. Quote, out of pure greed, Priscilla claimed that what she received was not enough for her to live on. Priscilla claimed that Elvis defrauded her, asserting that Elvis promised to always take care of her. So the former couple apparently went back to the negotiating table, and the lawsuit claims that Elvis was, quote, forced into entering into a modified settlement and marital termination agreement on October 4th, 1973. And from there, according to this suit, the payouts grew considerably. Quote, Elvis was forced to pay Priscilla $725,000 within 10 days of court approval, so equal to about $5,274,995.50 presently. And then there was an additional $720,000, so that's equal to about $5,238,616.22 presently, broken down into installments of $6,000 per month. Elvis was also forced to pay Priscilla 50% of the proceeds of the sale of the residence at 144 Monovale Drive in Los Angeles, California, and up to 1 year of spousal support in the amount of $4,200 per month. Again, in bolded letters, Priscilla's thirst for power and money was insatiable. Okay. But the complaint claims that Priscilla didn't stop there. Despite enriching herself and extorting millions of dollars from Elvis, she then placed a lien on Graceland on or around April 29th, 1977 in the amount of $494,024.49, so more than $2.2 million, adding pressure to Elvis less than 4 months before he died on August 16, 1977, from a heart attack and drug complications. Priscilla exerted undue pressure on Elvis, pushing him to his death. That's the allegation. That's what it says. And this is how it may lead to the claims of Cruz and Fialco. Let's bring it back to that. That it's related to Priscilla's name and likeness and trying to grow her brand. Because according to them, it turns out she isn't even supposed to be using the Presley name at all. According to their filing, since Priscilla divorced Elvis, she was entitled to nothing, as she was not mentioned in the will, and in fact, pursuant to her divorce agreement, she was supposed to stop using the surname Presley. After Elvis died in 1977, however, Priscilla continued to use the Presley name as she needed to exploit the name for her own financial gain despite Elvis's wishes otherwise. So in other words, the allegation is that Presley told Cruz and Fialco she owned the rights to use her name and image, but actually, she had already sold those rights to someone else and didn't say so. Her representations or alleged misrepresentations were made to get them to invest money to help her financially, and because they believed her and spent a lot of money helping her grow her brand, if they had known the truth, they wouldn't have done that. Now she owes them, they're out of pocket. Okay, so that brings us to what was just filed.
Okay.
And for that, I want to bring on Jordan Matthews, who is representing Cruz and Fialco in this case. We've had him on before. Jordan, thanks so much for taking the time to come back here on Sidebar. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much for having me, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Got it. Of course, so let's clear this up first. You filed this cross complaint on your client's behalf. Let's start here. What is a cross complaint? What is that? How is it different from the original complaint that you filed, if I'm understanding it correctly?
Well, a few things. A cross complaint is basically a response to a complaint with claims. So it's my client's claims against Priscilla. There's, with respect to your question about the difference in the other lawsuit, there's certain substantive claims. I'm happy to go into the specifics in terms of the specific allegations, but essentially it is a responsive and offensive claim to the actual.
We will go through specifics of this new filing. I think just for our viewers so they understand, right? First, it was Priscilla who initiated litigation against your clients, and then they filed the suit against her, or am I misunderstanding?
So it's fairly accurate, but there's a slight distinction. So actually, my clients actually initiated litigation against Priscilla in 2023. That was in Florida. Priscilla then filed what we believe is a retaliatory claim in 2024. This is our offensive response to this claim in California.
Okay, and what was she claiming, her retaliatory claim? Just real quickly summarize it.
She had a variety of claims. There is a claim that she claims, which we believe is completely false, that she claims elder abuse and things of that nature. We've seen no evidence of that, but this is our offensive claim, and actually offensive claims. It's about 20 claims, 20 causes of action against that complaint.
Got it. Okay. Now I want to talk about this new filing, and there are some specific paragraphs that I think are important to highlight. There's one paragraph, it's paragraph 30. It's about Lisa allegedly demanding that Priscilla resign as the only trustee of her life insurance policy because Lisa had apparently wanted to sell the policy off. Why is this significant?
It's significant for a few specific reasons. What's very crucial here is we had previously alleged that when Lisa passed away on January 12th of 2023, that at that time she was threatening to sue Priscilla and demanding that she resign, that Priscilla resign as the sole trustee of the irrevocable life insurance policy. But what's new and what's crucial is that Lisa was attempting to withdraw the cash value of that policy. So the allegation is that when Lisa ultimately passed away and when Priscilla was with her in the hospital, which is something she writes about in her book and where she directed, according to what's in her book, the doctors to take her off of life support. The allegation is that she did that knowing that she was stopping Lisa from withdrawing the cash value of that policy. Why that's crucial is that that meant that that $25 million policy was still active, and that's what allowed her to interject herself and create a dispute with Riley that ultimately resulted in a payout of $2.4 million to Priscilla.
And to be clear, Lisa had wanted to sell this to pay off a tax lien?
Hey, little electron, ready to power up? Not yet. I'm not here for an ordinary...
And to be clear, Lisa had wanted to sell this to pay off a tax lien?
From the records that we've reviewed, which include actually, there's a tax liability that she had, actually one of the exhibits in the cross complaint. It's not to state anything negative with respect to Lisa, but it's to paint a very clear picture of the evidence that we have, is that as of March of 2023, so shortly after her passing, there was a notice that she had a tax liability for one notice in particular of in excess of $900,000. So the withdrawing the cash value of the policy would have allowed her, and was intended to allow her, from what we know or what we've seen, to resolve that tax liability because her passport had been revoked. And so she was attempting to resolve that issue.
Talking taxes, this is a big bombshell here. So you got to have a bunch of paragraphs here that are about how Cruz and Fialco were working to finalize a settlement between Priscilla and Riley, and how Priscilla allegedly submitted paperwork to the IRS that was false, that this was about her jewelry. What is this allegation about, if you can expand upon it?
So this actually is even why the allegations that we just went into are actually crucial, because it shows character and credibility is always at issue in the context of litigation. But the simple point is this: when my clients had started their relationship with Priscilla, it was known in prior filings that Priscilla had a tax liability of around $700,000. So my clients came in to the relationship, they paid for her to retain a tax attorney so she could negotiate that. The allegation, and what's supported by the documents, which we actually submitted the documents in this filing, is that in May of 2023, she submitted documents under penalty of perjury stating, for example, the value of different property, the fair market value, for example, of jewelry. She listed that the fair market value of her jewelry was $6,000. The evidence that we have is that she has jewelry worth in excess of $5 million, and she also has collectibles, personal property that's currently in storage, or at the time certainly was in storage at Graceland, such as her wedding dress, a Mercedes, jewelry, different items that are worth in excess of millions of dollars. So simply, that was a misrepresentation to the IRS that she made. That's the allegation, when she was attempting to negotiate a resolution, a payment plan, a lower payment with the IRS.
Essentially, and I want to put words in mouth, are you accusing Priscilla of committing a crime, and is this, have you issued a criminal referral in some way?
That's not for me to make a decision on. This is how it's relevant to our claims. It's very simple. In this cross complaint, there are employment claims. And one of the employment claims is wrongful termination and violation of public policy. So when our clients were attempting to get her to comply with her legal requirements and saying, you need to actually submit the appraised value, the correct value of your assets to the IRS so you are fulfilling your obligations, the allegation is that she then terminated them. And to support that, we have a letter that came from tax counsel that my client forwarded to Priscilla on August 23rd of 2023, and the very next day they were terminated.
Now, aside from that letter, you say you have evidence to support this, and when you look at the paragraphs, it mentions a number of different exhibits. What are those exhibits? What is the evidence that you have to support this claim regarding the tax liability, regarding the alleged tax misrepresentations?
So it's the actual filing that she submitted to the IRS, signed by her under penalty of perjury. It's an attachment that lists the value of the various assets, one of which, a lot of it is redacted. We actually focused specifically on what was the specific issue, which was her jewelry that she had valued, the fair market value of $6,000. So that's the submission to the IRS. Additionally, there is correspondence with Graceland about attempting to obtain the property, such as her wedding dress and a Mercedes that is there. There are various other items, and also the fact that there is that letter that is from August 23rd of 2023 from tax counsel, in addition to a text message from my client to Priscilla that has the letter stating, this is something that obviously needed to be discussed, and we have other evidence to support that as well.
By the way, has she or her counsel responded to that claim specifically, ever?
Not to my knowledge. This is a new allegation in the cross complaint. Obviously, it was just accepted by the court earlier this week, so they'll have to respond to that.
There's another part of your filings that involves a Kia Morgan. First, let's start. Who is Kia Morgan, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly?
Kia Morgan, from our understanding, that's the name that he ultimately goes by.
Our firm here at Kate & Brubb is able to handle the entire
I hate how they have these mid-sentence.
From our understanding, that's the name that he ultimately goes by. He is known, or his history was known as someone who was involved with Stan Lee, the comic book creator. There were allegations of elder abuse against him years ago. I'm not going to speak to those. I know he went through the, I believe, a criminal process with that. And I do believe that was resolved where, there was, it was ultimately resolved. I can't really speak to that.
Sure.
But what happened here is that shortly actually after my clients resolved the trust dispute between Priscilla and Riley in around May or June of 2023, it was actually about May or so of 2023, Kia Morgan introduced himself, or interjected himself, that's the allegation, into Priscilla's life, and they had conversations, or he had conversations with my clients, but ultimately, I've reviewed a lot of text correspondence between Kia Morgan and my client, and I've seen very clearly that he engaged in a way where the relationship turned sour, and the timeline indicates that he was very much so involved in tarnishing and creating a major wedge between my clients and Priscilla, and therefore there's a claim against him, two claims, one for tortious interference with contract, and also for tortious interference with prospective economic advantage.
And Kia Morgan's mentioned again in this cross complaint when it comes to the IRS, when it comes to valuing the assets at Graceland, right?
No, so he's not actually, it's a good question, but he's not actually involved in the allegation of valuing the assets. That was going on at the same time, so the time lines up. Correct.
Okay, glad you clarified that. Okay. Now, I don't think there's a substantive change when it comes to the circumstances surrounding Lisa's death, but there is something that's called out. There's a little bit in the cross complaint about this, right?
Well, the distinction, just to be clear, is what I believe I'd referenced before, but just for clarity, is that we had mentioned before that when Lisa ultimately passed, the allegation is that Priscilla was with her, that she directed the doctors to take her off of life support, and that was counter to a advanced healthcare directive where Lisa had stated previously in writing that she wanted anything and everything to be done to make sure that her life was prolonged. But the addition here, the new information, is that when that happened, that Lisa was attempting to cash out the value of her life insurance policy. And so again, when Priscilla made that decision, she did that knowing, that's the allegation, that she was stopping Lisa from cashing in the value of the policy, which meant that that $25 million policy that she ultimately made a claim against was still basically in play. It was something that she could still go after, and she ultimately did, because that resulted in a $2.4 million payout, which my clients negotiated pursuant to Priscilla's demands. So that's the distinction.
Substantively, is there anything else in the cross complaint that is a significant difference from what we've seen before?
So aside from the allegations that we've referenced with regards to the tax issue in particular, which is really the biggest focus substantively, we obviously also have claims for various employment claims, such as the wrongful termination and violation of public policy.
So
That is also tied into a claim against Priscilla's company, GLDE Inc., and that is a new defendant in this cross complaint.
Outside of the cross
So
complaint, I wanted to
so
ask you about something else.
basically,
So Priscilla Presley's son, Navarone Garcia.
okay, so basically, is a whole bunch of tax stuff, a whole bunch of stuff related to taxes, and a whole bunch of other legal stuff. I guess is what's going on here.
He's been sued too. He's now part of this litigation. My understanding is the main allegation is that he benefited from the services of your clients and didn't pay them?
In short, correct. To clarify that, is that when my clients were working for Priscilla, she demanded, again, these are our allegations, and we have a lot of evidence to support that she worked for Navarone, her son, and specifically, they were also tasked with negotiating a very large, ultimately multi-million-dollar settlement for Navarone in the dispute between Priscilla and Riley. So they worked extensively hard to resolve that issue, but they also did things like working for his band. So they did all of these things. There are employment claims against him. There's also claims for the value of their services against him. And there's also claims for tortious interference with contract and tortious interference with prospective economic advantage, because the allegation is that he also interfered with our clients' agreements with Priscilla.
Have you heard anything from his side? Have you heard anything from Priscilla's side? And where is the case currently? What's the status of it?
So what I can say is there's obviously very active, pretty aggressive litigation going on, specifically with our side and with Priscilla's side. And Navarone's complaint is an active litigation as well. The short answer is that we're in discovery at this time.
Got it. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time to explain this, because it can get a little complicated. There's a lot of different players. There's a lot of different events. I wanted to get a little bit more clarity as to what was going on, what the current status of it is. But Jordan Matthews, thank you so much for taking the time, as always.
Of course. Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it.
And that is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you next time.
And that's it. I'll see y'all later. Peace.